Hi everyone, I'm Mackenzie, a data scientist from Michigan, and in this video I'm going to be walking you through an introduction to the RStudio IDE. In this video we'll be covering the basics of how to get up and running with RStudio, including installing RStudio, navigating the dashboard, writing and running basic R code, and creating R notebook documents. By the end of this video, you will be able to write and execute your own scripts of R code, create and export simple plots, author R notebook documents, and customize your RStudio by changing the theme. First, I want to talk a little bit about what RStudio is. RStudio is an integrated development environment, or IDE, for writing and executing R code. It consists of four main windows. First is the code editor, which is where you write your R script. Then the console, which is where code is executed and the results are displayed. The environment workspace, where you can see all of your environment variables and your work history. And the plots, files, packages, and help window, where you can change your working directory, view and activate packages, and view the help documentation. It's very useful to have all of these windows visible at once. The basic R environment just consists of a code editor and a console as two completely separate windows. But in RStudio, you have those two windows and more all in one place. I'll be explaining how to use the various windows as I go along, but first I want to talk about how to download and install RStudio on your own computer. Installing RStudio is simple. First, go to the RStudio website, and then scroll down until you see the screen that looks like this. Find the appropriate installer for your platform, download the installer by clicking on it, and install it by following the instructions. I also want to note that using RStudio requires that you already have R installed on your computer. And if you don't already have R installed, you can download it by clicking right here. Okay, now that we've downloaded and installed RStudio, we can start writing some R code. When you open up RStudio, it should look something like this. And it doesn't look exactly like what I showed you before because we don't have our code editor window yet. So to get one of those, go up to File, New File, R Script, and there you go. Now it should look like what I described in the introduction. The first thing I want to talk about is how to customize the appearance of your RStudio by changing the theme. To do that, go up to RStudio, Preferences, and then the Appearance tab. And here you see that you can change the editor theme. There are a variety of different themes available. You can see that they have different colors of background and font colors and different colors for syntax highlighting. So just choose whichever one works best for you and whichever one you like best. I'm going to go with this one. And then you can also customize things like the editor font and the font size. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing. You can also customize the pane layout. So those four windows don't have to be in the default layout. You can change it up. So for example, you can put the console window in the upper left and the code editor window in the lower left. Or you can put your files up in your environment workspace. You can put your history down with your files, plots, packages, and help. Whatever you like best and whatever makes the most sense for you. I'm just going to keep it how it is right now. Now that we know how to customize our appearance, let's write some code. So since eventually we're going to be wanting to make some plots, I'm going to start by creating a variable called x and assigning it to a vector of x values. So I'm just going to choose 5 values here. And then I'm going to do the same thing for a variable called y. And as I go along, I'm going to talk about different useful keyboard shortcuts that you can use. And the first one is the shortcut for the assignment operator right here. So to do that, just type either Option or Alt, depending on your platform, and dash. And then that'll give you the assignment operator. So these keyboard shortcuts are useful for bits of code that you write over and over again. It just makes it a little bit faster to write it. So just like before, I'm going to assign y to a vector of 5 values. Okay, so now let's run this code. So to run your code, there are a few different ways you can do it. One way is just going up here and clicking this Run button. Or you can use another keyboard shortcut, and this one is Command or Control Enter. And then you can see that down here in our console, it's run our line of code. And then it also put our x variable up in our global environment. And it tells us that there are 5 values that are numbers, and then it lists the values right here. And if you want to run multiple lines of code at once, you can do that by highlighting the lines of code that you want to run, and then either by clicking Run again or by using the shortcut, Command Enter. So you can see again, it ran our code down here in the console, and it put our y variable up in the global environment. Okay, so now that we have our x and y values, we can make a plot. So to do that, just to make a simple plot, we can do plot x comma y, and then Command Enter. And we can see that it puts our plot down here in the plot window. And then let's say that we want a slightly different plot. Let's say we want both points and lines, so you can do that by changing it to type equals B. And then let's run this line of code again with Command Enter. And we can see our updated plot. And you can navigate through all of the plots that you've made by clicking on these arrows up here. So there's our first plot, and there's our second plot. You can zoom and look at your plot bigger by clicking on the zoom button. And you can export your plots by clicking on export, and you can do that as an image, and you can choose the format and change the size, or you can export as a PDF. Now I'm going to show you how to work with files and directories in RStudio. So let's go over to our Files tab. And let's say we want to read in a file that we have in this R folder called mydata.csv. We can do that by typing read.csv and then the file name, mydata.csv. And let's run that line and see what happens. What we get is this error, cannot open file, no such file or directory. And the reason we're getting that error is because our working directory is not the same as the directory that this file is located in. What we want our working directory to be is the file path desktop R. And in RStudio, it's really easy to set your working directory. Just go over here to More, and then click Set as Working Directory. You can also do this by typing this command right here. So now that we have our working directory set to the correct path, let's run this line again. And now it has read in the file and printed out the data in this data set. So now let's save this data set to a variable. We'll call it my data. And let's run this line. Now we can see that my data is over here in our environment workspace. And a really nice feature of RStudio is that you can click on this and view the data set as a spreadsheet. This is especially useful if you have a big data set or a data set that you're unfamiliar with, and you want to be able to look at all of the rows and columns and scroll through them and get a better sense of what your data actually looks like. Alright, so now that we have this data file that we read in, I want to show you how to read in data by installing a package that contains some data sets. So going over to our Packages tab, you can see a list of all of the packages that we have installed. So the package that I want to work with is called NYC Flights 13. First, I'm just going to delete it because I want to show you how to install a package. To install a package, use install.packages and then type in the name of your package. Now, a really nice feature of RStudio is when you're typing in a function, it auto-completes for you. So here it's auto-completing after we typed install dot, it's auto-completing install.packages. And then we can press tab to finish typing it out. And then it also shows you some information about the arguments of the function. Another way you can get more information about a function is by typing question mark and then the name. And what this does is it brings up the R documentation in the Help tab. So here you can see a description of the function and a list of all of the arguments, and then a lot of information, including examples of running the function. Another thing you can do is if you don't remember the exact name of the function you're trying to look up, you can type 2 question marks and then part of the name. So let's just say we're going to type install. So then it shows everything that matches that partial name that you typed in. So scrolling all the way down, we can see right here, this is our function that we're interested in right now, and we can click on it and it brings us right back to that R documentation. Okay, so now let's actually install this package. Run this line. Okay, it was successfully installed. Now let's go to our Packages tab and scroll down. So here's the one we just installed. You can see that the check box next to it is not checked off. And that means that the package is not activated yet and we can't use it. So a few different ways you can activate it is you can just check the box, or you can type library and then the package name, or you can type require and then the package name. Okay, so now let's click on it and see what is inside of it. So here we see that there are a few different data sets within this package. Let's click on this flights one. So our flights data set, we have a description of the data set, and we have also a description of the column names and what they mean. So let's find a good one to make a plot of. So here, this distance column, distance between airports and miles, we can make a histogram of that. So hist flights, which is this data that is part of the NYC Flights 13 package that we just installed. And we want the distance column. Let's run that. And now we have our histogram of our distance column. The last thing I want to do is show you how to create an R notebook document. An R notebook is an R Markdown document with chunks of code that can be executed independently and interactively, with the output of the code visible immediately beneath it. To create an R notebook document, go up here to File, New File, R Notebook. We can see here that it's already populated it with some information. So before I show you how to add to this R Notebook document, let's just save it and see what we have. So I'm just going to save it as NB test for notebook test. Okay, save that, and then let's preview it. So here's our R notebook document. It says this is an R Markdown notebook. When you execute code within the notebook, the results appear beneath the code. And so you can see here that we have our code. which is a plot of the cars dataset, but it hasn't been executed yet, so we can't see the plot. So let's go back here. It says try executing this chunk by clicking Run within the chunk or by placing your cursor inside of it and pressing Command-Shift-Enter. So let's do that, Command-Shift-Enter. And here we have our executed chunk of code, and we can see the plot right here. And now if we go to preview again, we have our code and then the executed code, which is our plot. Now let's go back here and insert another chunk of code. So to insert a new chunk, click the Insert Chunk button on the toolbar or press Command-Option-I. So here's insert, some R code, and let's have it be head of cars. So this will show us the first few rows of our cars dataset. Now if we go back to preview, we see our code right here, head cars, but since we haven't executed it, the output is not displayed. Okay, let's go back here and execute our code. And here are our first 6 rows of our data set. And then if we go back to preview, we can see our code and the output of the code. And we can also hide the code by clicking Hide over here, and then show it again. So our notebook documents are really useful because you can have chunks of text explaining your code, you can show the code itself, and you can show the output of the code. So it's a really nice way to have everything in one place. Okay, now that we're at the end of the video, you should be able to perform these basic tasks in RStudio on your own. This was a very basic primer to get you all up and running with RStudio. There are a lot more features to explore, and I encourage you to check out the documentation if you want to dive deeper into some of RStudio's more advanced features. Thanks for your time, and happy coding!